How can we change the world? Karl Marx had a few ideas. He said that philosophers have only interpreted the world. The point is to change it. And we have changed it in many ways since then. We've eliminated legal slavery. We have toppled kings. We have expanded the vote to those without property and even to women. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable, said John F. Kennedy. How can we make these changes? There have been leaders in the past, such as Lenin, Robespierre, and George Washington, who have used violence to effect social change. Others have used nonviolent techniques. Most famous have been Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi with his techniques of satyagraha, or nonviolent resistance. Now, Gandhi learned his method from his wife, Kasturba. Kasturba was, they were married very young, and she was someone who was unwilling to concede to his jealous demands that she tell him everywhere where she went. She also resisted his desire to educate her to read and write. So in both these ways, she exerted her own will. And so through her nonviolent resistance, she educated him in his techniques of nonviolent resistance. Now, Gandhi went to South Africa, and there's a famous scene from the film Gandhi where he first arrives there and he's thrown off the train. In his autobiography, though, he talks about a little bit further on that journey where he is in this stagecoach. And I think the scene really describes the process of satyagraha very elegantly and in a small, accessible way. So he's on this journey, and he wants to ride in the coach itself with the other passengers, but he's Indian, and they are white South African. So because of the color, the racism of the time, he was unable to do that. So what he did was he sat on top with the stage driver, which was fine for a time, but they went to a stop, and this one passenger, a bully, decided that he wanted to sit up on top and have a little breath of fresh air during this stop. He wanted Gandhi's seat. Gandhi was not willing to give it up to him, and he was very dangerously opposing the racial hierarchy within South African society at the time. The bully told him to move. He said he would not. The bully started to physically abuse him, hit him, but Gandhi held on to the seat and refused to yield. At this point, the other passengers saw what Gandhi was doing. They realized that the bully did not have the right to take his seat, and they intervened. They told the bully to stop pestering this young Indian man who's new here to South Africa. At that point, the bully stopped. So by taking a stand, not by throwing a punch at the bully, but by non-violently resisting, he was able to evoke the influence of the others upon this man and get him to stop. And I think that story encapsulates the system of nonviolent resistance in a very elegant way. Gandhi went back to India, spent about 20 years in South Africa, and then applied himself to nonviolent resistance campaigns across India. In the aftermath of the First World War, these came to a close in 1922 when violence broke out at Chari Chara, and Gandhi decided he did not want to participate in a campaign that turned violent. And so he withdrew from politics at that point. A little bit later, though, in 1930, he got involved in his famous Salt March, where he organized about 80 protesters in a march that took a little less than a month to reach the sea, where he made salt, breaking the British law against Indians making salt without paying them. So he made his own salt. So this was a very important part of the Indian independence movement and Satyagraha campaign. He also was involved in fasting. He did many fasts over the course of his life, probably most famously towards the period of Indian independence and partition, where groups of Hindus and Muslims were tearing each other apart, killing each other by the millions in the streets, rioting. He fasted in Calcutta, saying that he would fast unto death until peace broke out again and the violence stopped. And he was successful. He was able to apply this pressure on followers and other people. Now there's various avenues of applying and learning about the techniques that Gandhi talked about. Gene Sharp is one of these people who have studied Gandhi's techniques and have distilled them into forms that you can appropriate and use. From Dictatorship to Democracy here is a small pamphlet. Anyone around the world can download it and have. It has been very influential in recent movements throughout the world, as I'll show you. Now, the techniques of nonviolent resistance include picking a specific issue, training the participants, engaging observers, like the stagecoach story I told you about, and then using political jujitsu, which is the use of one's opponent's violence against them. Not by counter-violence, not by using violence against them, but by absorbing that violence, not striking back, and essentially gaining the higher moral ground and gaining the support and sympathy of people around one, but not giving in. Notice that Gandhi did not give up his seat. He didn't fight back, but he also didn't give it up to the bully, and he should have just got down, but he didn't do that. So Gene Sharp talks about different methods of nonviolent action. He has 3 different stages. This is the least interventionist stage, including protest and persuasion. Now he has a total of 198 different techniques that one can use, and these are just a very small sampling of these. But the basic level here is communication, getting the issue, whatever it is, across. The next level is non-cooperation. Here's when one actually withdraws one's participation, and through a strike or some sort of boycott. Actually using non-cooperation is the second level, and then the third level is disruption. This is where you go out of your way to disrupt the existing system. And the Greensboro in 1960, the lunch counter sit-ins, going in and actually actively trying to disrupt the system of segregation from the civil rights movement is an example of that. There are many examples throughout history of successful application of nonviolent resistance, not just in India, not just in the US civil rights movement. In war-torn Nazi Germany, in Berlin, spouses came together and protested for a week against the abduction of their Jewish husbands. And the Nazis backed down. They released the husbands. This is an amazing case of the power of nonviolent resistance. The civil rights movement, the Montgomery bus boycotts, of course, are another example of a long, year-long struggle to walk to work, to use carpools instead of the racist system of the buses there. The Berlin Wall, the fall of communism across Eastern Europe, is another example of nonviolent resistance. Some was violent in Romania, violence broke out because of the regime there, but for the most part, 1989 was a peaceful transition of power. In the Philippines, in 1986, Ferdinand Marcos, the dictator there, confronted with nonviolent resistance of the people in the Philippines and was overthrown. Another example, Milosevic in Serbia in 2000. The resistance group Otpor used Gene Sharp's techniques specifically and was able to mount a very creative campaign that got rid of Milosevic. So the Albert Einstein Institute, founded by Gene Sharp, is one source of this information, Waging Nonviolent Struggle. I highly recommend. How to Start a Revolution is a DVD movie you can see about Gene Sharp's techniques. There are a number of other books that I recommend. A Force More Powerful, which has a DVD, and it's a series of case studies looking at some of these cases you can study more about Berlin and the Philippines, and some of these other cases, Solidarity in the 1980s in Poland. Ash and Roberts, Civil Resistance and Power Politics, is another one of these books that has a long series of case studies. This mostly focuses on the collapse of communism, but it looks at the early 21st century, some of the uprisings that occurred. So Bringing Down a Dictator is an excellent documentary that shows Odpor getting rid of Milosevic. I highly recommend this one as well. Also, you can get involved in the Peace, Justice, and Human Rights Initiative at Florida Atlantic University. I am a member of the executive committee of this initiative. We are hiring a director this year. I teach classes in Introduction to Peace Studies. I'm teaching one of those right now. And we go over some of these techniques, and I encourage you on your own to study Gandhi, study King, learn about the techniques of nonviolent resistance, and use them to bring about that change in the world that we see, but not through violence, through peace and nonviolence. Thank you.